The Bracero Program was a set of agreements from both the Mexican and United States government that created short-term agricultural labor opportunities for Mexican men on American soil. The program began in 1942 and ended in 1964 and created a massive wave of migration for men willing to work. On paper, the agreement seemed to suggest that the program is beneficial for both the U.S. and Mexico. Congress passed the Revised Agricultural Act of 1949 that proclaimed that the Secretary of Labor and the farmer employer have duties and responsibilities to ensure that Mexican workers were treated fairly and adequately. For example, it states how the Secretary of Labor can provide transportation, provide workers with such emergency medical care, and burial expenses. It also adds that it will assist such workers and employers in negotiating contracts for agricultural employment. This law provides a foundation for the Bracero Program and establishes the active role that the U.S. would be taking to ensure proper treatment of Mexican laborers. However, upon further analysis, it becomes evident that the legal intent did not match the execution of the program. On record, there was the assurance that certain benefits would be provided to the workers, and yet there were clear abuses towards the braceros in their living and working conditions that illuminated an ugly truth of the program. To understand why so many Mexican men were willing to come to the U.S., it is important to recognize the context of the time. Many families had very low living standards in Mexico. They suffered hunger, homelessness, and other hardships. The men arrived to the U.S. with high hopes for the program and what it could mean for them and their families back home. However, they soon realized that the program was filled with false promises that preyed on their necessity. One bracero, Mauricio Herrera, expressed the pressure he felt to enter into the Bracero Program and the disappointment that followed. There was not enough rain, no credit, no government support, so I had to go north. Didn't earn much money. I thought I would, but I didn't. Nearly 3/4 of the braceros were single and younger than 21 years old. The contracts require that there be a standard safety procedure when dealing with transportation, but growers would choose a transportation they saw fit from the camps to the worksite. Examples were old school buses, large trailers, open bed trucks. Braceros remarked the uncomfortable conditions they had to endure, including extreme heat and limited space in the vehicles. To add on, once the braceros arrived at their residencies, their experience became much worse. On the fields, they had back-breaking labor every day. They were under the orders of the camp manager, for which most included a very strict schedule of early days, hard labor, and early sleep. The braceros are paid very low wages, and the Mexican government eventually demanded that this be amended. They insisted on renegotiating in order for there to be fair wages, and this led to much tension between the countries. While one would hope to come back to a proper living station after working hard all day, often the barracks were overcrowded and with no ventilation and no access to good drinking water. What they were provided with was not a matter of excitement. Many braceros reported having one small bed, one shared toilet, and limited shower stalls. One historian notes how there were many clear violations of contracts. Lack of water during the workday and the right to prepare your own food was often ignored. Braceros would be intimidated into remaining quiet and complying, fearing that they would be denied work or sent home. It discouraged most from speaking out or raising questions about the living conditions. To give one example of the extent of this complete negligence was when the Department of Health in San Diego region wrote to Roland Height asking him to bring his labor camp to code, which included an accumulation of trash, dirty kitchen, no hot water, and no working toilets. Yet ironically, despite these clear violations, there was no threat that the camp would be fined, let alone be closed down. Some assemblymen argued that to order the camp to meet these requirements at the moment was unreasonable because it was during harvesting season. If such improvements took place, it would jeopardize the harvest. This treatment of the braceros by the United States reveals a cruel truth. Braceros were simply seen as a labor source, a machine that was worked until it stopped giving. Often, the Bracero program is seen as purely economic agreement, and there is failure to see the personal effects this program had on the lives of men. The bodies of the Braceros were exploited, and what seemed to be a fair agreement on paper proved to be a complete abuse of power. The U.S. valued the labor, not the laborer, and so the poor living and working conditions were something the Braceros simply had to endure. The U.S. were the ones in need of help, and this should have given the Braceros leverage. Yet, it was the U.S. that defined the terms of conditions. They ultimately decided how the Braceros would be treated, and the treatment evidently did not have to match the legal intent the U.S. initially set.